I want to talk a little bit about our preps and what they should focus on. When I talk about our preps, I'm talking about how prepared we are for an emergency situation. The focus that we see Hollywood on and social media as well, because that's where a lot of the time where we hear preps mentioned, it's Hollywood particularly, but also social media glamorizes these things, where it's some person all by themselves with their rucksack in the wilderness somewhere, maybe sitting in their bunker on a pile of gold bars. This is not reality. This is not what a proper prep kit should involve. And in an emergency, that is not the situation we will find ourselves in. Real prepping, it's more mundane and it's simple. The fact that it's simple, though, it should take stress off of us. A lot of us, we enjoy prepping, but when we peel back the onion, a big part of the reason why we do this is because we have a measure of anxiety where we worry about things that could happen. And a lot of the times we base that on things that we have seen that happened, perhaps in a nearby county, a nearby state, a nearby country. And we prep accordingly. So, what I want to focus on is what situations, emergency situations, have we seen in our lives, or really in the span of human history, and what have we not seen? What emergencies have we not seen? So, there's never been a zombie apocalypse, so you don't need to prepare for that. There's never been total and complete worldwide anarchy. The Middle Ages got pretty rough, but there was always some semblance of order. But what has there been? There has been food shortages. There has been shortages of food, or sorry, of medicine as well, and other basic necessities of life. There has been natural disasters that have caused people to flee their homes. We think of the many wildfires that have been dominating the news lately. It's been so bad where many people have even lost their homes. There's been pandemics. We don't need to explain much of that. We are all familiar with that. And there's been economic hardships, even economic collapses. So, where do we need to focus our time and our energy on when it comes to being prepared? We need to focus on storing up the necessities of life. I'm not talking about hoarding and going crazy, but we need to be prepared. We need to have a reasonable supply of things like food and water in our homes, medicines if you or your loved ones require them based on your circumstances. I laugh at institutions and organizations that mandate and require that their adherents have at least 6 months of food on hand, for example. All right, so let's just go down that road for a moment. If you are in a situation where you need to depend on that 6 months worth of food and other provisions that you've stockpiled, do you think everyone else has prepared to that extent? Absolutely not. People will be looting, they will be breaking into homes and businesses and stealing the necessities of life to provide for themselves because they are not prepared. I guarantee you that your 6 months worth of provisions, they will not last you 6 months. I'm not discouraging you from preparing to that extent, but just keep that in your mind that 6 months, it's not going to last you 6 months. How about your vehicle? Do you keep it or do you fill it with fuel once it reaches half a tank of gas? Or do you constantly let it get to a quarter tank or when that empty light comes on? Let's think back to people that we mentioned that needed to flee during wildfires. Could you imagine if they only had a quarter tank of fuel in their vehicle and they're fleeing on the highway and there's flames coming from every side and they run out of gas? What are they going to do then? It's very possible in that situation that they could lose their lives, all because they weren't keeping their fuel tank at least half full. That is an excellent best practice to live by. Even your glasses that you wear. How well can you see without them? Instead of just throwing out that old pair, keep it, put it in your go bag, and in an emergency, if you lose your glasses, they get destroyed, or whatever happens to them, you have that backup pair in your rucksack, in your go bag. Speaking of go bags, how ready and accessible is yours? Is it buried deep in the closet somewhere? Or is it perhaps by your bed where you sleep? There's been some serious apartment fires in the city where I live, and a couple of them have happened very late in the night, 2, 3 in the morning while everyone's sleeping. The scene outside of that burning apartment was most people that fled were standing outside on the street and the sidewalk in their underwear. Some people, not even that, because they weren't prepared. Keep that go bag next to your bed. If you need to flee in an emergency situation, you are likely not going to have time to pack a suitcase. Have that bag ready so you can grab it and flee. I want to talk before we move on, I want to keep on the subject of our go bags for a moment. I recommend that people have a PACE plan. So that is a primary, an alternate, a contingency, and an emergency. That's a 4-step plan. Bugging out with your go bag should not be the first step. It should not be the primary. It should not even be the alternate. Again, Hollywood has glamorized what bugging out means. I challenge you, if you take your go bag right now, if you can even survive off of that for 72 hours, can you survive a week? Can you survive a month? Can you survive 2 months? Unlikely, very unlikely. In fact, I know you can't survive 2 months off of it. Maybe you've got hunting provisions in your bag, whatever, I'm not going to get into that. But you don't have 2 months worth of food in your rucksack. Your primary plan needs to be bugging in, as it were, staying inside your home where most of your provisions are. As soon as you leave your home, you only have what is in your bag. Everything else that is in your house, you no longer have access to that. Your primary, again, stay at home. Your alternate could be going to a friend's or a relative's home and bugging in there. Your contingency plan could be in your vehicle, escaping with your vehicle. And then your emergency plan, that's when you start thinking about bugging out with only a rucksack on your feet. But that should be the last or next to last plan. I want to talk now a little bit about economic collapses that we've seen in history and even currently. So we have Argentina in 2001 and current day Venezuela. So people in these situations, they still had to go to work. They still had to make money. Their money isn't really worth much. It wasn't really worth much in Argentina 2001, but they still had to go to work and make money because they still had to pay for food. They still had to pay their landlord rent. They still had to pay their mortgage. They still needed to put fuel in their vehicles. Why am I mentioning this? Because these individuals could not stay at home all day and protect their homes and their possessions and their precious preparations. They had to go to work. They couldn't be at home all the time. So I recommend to keep some of our preps off-site or away from our main home. Perhaps we can keep them at a friend's or relatives again. That's why it's so important to keep a network of friends. We're not in this ourselves. We need to have friends. We need to have contacts. We need to have people that we can rely on in an emergency. Build those relationships up now. But what matters then, what we need to focus our time and energy on when it comes to our preparations is the necessities of life. People in Argentina in 2001, they weren't walking to work in their $1,000 Crye Precision body armor. And if people were prepping crazy expensive Gucci gear like that, it was getting stolen when they went to work, when they weren't at home. And if they were wearing it, that makes them a target. Your military camouflage body armor and clothes, they're not blending you into the buildings. People will see you. They will notice you. You will become a target because they know that you are prepared and that you have the necessities of life. Rather, you want to focus on being gray man, blending in, not being noticed, not being an enticing target. Do not look interesting to others. Another thing we saw in Argentina and also in Venezuela was individuals and families that had their farms, their acreages, their homesteads. The government, even rebel factions in Argentina, they were seizing these properties so that they could control food production and have these locations that provided a measure of security for themselves. So do not have your preps again all in one place, your eggs all in one basket. Branch out, have them cached somewhere else. Again, have maybe a go bag at a friend's or relative's. I mentioned that a few times because things like that have proven to be so important, and people that haven't done these things in times of emergencies have ran into trouble because of this. Another thing that we saw was in Argentina specifically, the ATMs running out of cash. People were waiting for hours in lineups to get cash out of ATMs, and when they got to the ATM, there was no cash. Bank runs were happening. So if it's possible, if it's feasible for you and your family, keep a reasonable amount of cash in your go bag. People might say that's outlandish, that's crazy. Really? What was it? Just was it March of this year, I believe, 2023, where that bank in Silicon Valley, where it collapsed because people panicked and they started pulling their money out of that bank. These are situations that we have seen, in fact, very recently. Be prepared for these situations. Thinking about, I mentioned at the beginning, Hollywood, how it glamorizes preps with people sitting on their tons of gold bars. Let's just, again, go down that road for a moment. You have your gold bars. What are you going to do? Walk down the street with a gold bar sticking out of your pocket? And what do you have to cut that gold bar down to actually make purchases? Or are you just going to be giving out gold bars for every loaf of bread that you need? Let's say you do have nice little gold coins. You buy a loaf of bread for me. Now I've got that gold coin. Who determines the value of that? Who says that that gold coin is going to have the same value tomorrow or even an hour from now when I want to go and use that? That kind of preparation, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to think that your pile of gold bars is going to provide you with some massive extra layer of security than the other person next to you has that doesn't have that preparation. Is a gold bar going to fill your stomach? Is it going to take away your hunger pangs? No. Focus your time and energy on things that actually matter. The preps that will save your life and save the life of your family, they are, again, simple. They're dirty, they're grimy, they're basic. It's the necessities of life. It's food, it's water, it's clothing. Doesn't have to be expensive clothing, but it is clothing, shelter, and depending on your circumstances, medicine. I think of water. Do you have a reasonable supply of water at home, perhaps in bottles or in jugs? And when that water runs out, do you have a way to purify water that has not been treated from a nearby lake, river, for example? Or if there is an issue with water treatment in your city, do you have a way to purify that? What I really like is using chlorine tabs. They're lightweight, they're simple, and easy just to stick in your rucksack, in your go bag. A lot of people don't think about how fires can also be used to boil water. People were doing that for thousands of years before we had chlorine to treat water, and people weren't dying. Well, maybe some of them were, but it's an extremely effective way. Whenever I go camping in the backcountry, my main method of cleaning my water, treating it, is boiling it. It's free. You use twigs, whatever you find on the ground, to heat that water and boil it. Keep that in your bag of ways or your tricks to treat and clean water. Boiling is extremely effective. Another one I also like to talk about, and actually, this one it gets missed a lot, but it's probably one of the top um, things that will help us to survive in an emergency. Are you in shape? This needs to be a part of your prep. Do you eat well? Do you exercise regularly? When you have a life that involves these things, you are going to be able to move quicker and faster and have better endurance, helping you to get out of an emergent situation faster and to be able to move for longer periods of time and over longer distances. Again, something like this is what is going to save your life. Doesn't mean you need to go sign up for some expensive gym membership across the street. Something simple that you could be doing is running 2 or 3 times a week. Just start at 15 or 30-minute intervals. Do push-ups every day. When you go to the grocery store, park at the furthest parking stall away, forcing yourself to put in those extra steps and to walk to the grocery store and carrying those heavy bags of groceries that extra distance. Again, these aren't the preps that Hollywood and social media talk about because they're not glamorous. But these are the things that will save your life. Thinking about our everyday life again, how are we with our neighbors? We don't need to be friends with them, but we need to be friendly. When we see them leaving, when we see them coming home at the end of the day, do we smile at them? Do we wave at them? Next time you make a pie, make 2, give 1 to your neighbor. When you go to the grocery store and find some great deal, I'm not saying you need to spend a ton of money, but when you find some deal, if it's reasonable, buy 2, give 1 to your neighbor. Start forming those relationships now. And if you find yourself in an emergency, it's more likely that you will be able to work together and that they will help you if you are in need because you've already built up that rapport. You've already built that relationship. I like to, talking about our homes, keeping on that same subject, when it comes to gray man, a lot of people just focus on their clothing and maybe even how they act, how they behave, but it's also how we keep our property. Is our home, do we keep it according to that same gray man principle, where it's things aren't very unique? We don't want our home to be enticing to people. We don't want them to notice it. We want them to keep on walking, as it were, without stopping and smelling the roses, for example. Just keep on walking. There's nothing interesting here. I like to talk a lot about perception management. These are things that I'm going to get more into in future videos, but just briefly touching on it. Some people like to have dogs for security. Okay, but just any old dog is not going to help you with that perception management and scare off a would-be burglar, a would-be criminal. Those little punting-sized dogs that I like to call them, those little things that sit on your lap or ladies like to carry in their purse, that's not scaring away a burglar. What you need is a dog that is perceived as being aggressive. A Rottweiler, a German Shepherd, a Belgian Malinois. These dogs have the perception that they are aggressive and that if someone breaks in, these dogs might attack them. These are the dogs that you want to have, not those little small lap dogs or a golden retriever that the only thing it can think about is the next time it's going to play frisbee or play with a football. You want a dog that is perceived as, I don't want to mess with this dog. What about your lawn? I spoke about keeping your home gray, not being enticing or very noticeable, but you still want to keep it well manicured. When a burglar walks by 2 homes and one has a nice freshly mowed lawn, maybe the garden has nice flowers that are being well maintained, the garden's being weeded, it shows that there is signs of life in this home, that this home is alive with activity. The next door, the grass isn't cut, the driveway's dirty, there's garbage everywhere. It shows that the homeowner doesn't care about their property. Maybe they're away on vacation. It doesn't show that signs of life. Criminals, they don't want to be seen. They want to go unnoticed. They are more likely to avoid that home that the lawn is well maintained, that's showing signs of life, and that are more likely to target that home that is not well maintained. Again, these are things that are basic, things that aren't discussed often on other discussions where people talk about preps. But things like this is where we want to focus our time and our energy, and really they're easy to do. With perception management again, just what about even keeping some size 12 cowboy boots on your front step? When that burglar walks up to your steps and he sees these boots, what goes through his mind? He's thinking of some 350-pound, 6'5" dude who is going to be there waiting for him when he opens the door. He's going to be moving on to the next house. Things like this add to that perception management and dissuade burglars from targeting and selecting your home. All right, I kind of wanted to keep the discussion briefish, I guess. We're at 20 minutes kind of thing. I'm going to discuss more about home security in the sense of how we can make our home less enticing. A discussion around if we're purchasing or renting a home, which neighborhoods are less likely to be targeted by criminals, by burglars, and the information that I'm providing, it's not just things that I've pulled up out of my head. These are things that have actually been studied at universities, specifically University of Florida. There's some excellent strategies around there showing which homes are more likely to be targeted by thieves. But for this particular discussion, that's a wrap. Thanks for checking it out. And as always, until next time, remain alive.